Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for TSNN's complimentary webinar series, where we continue to offer valuable content on a monthly basis to our subscribers. We'd like to thank our sponsors today, MCCA, Advantage Boston, and OnStream Media. They continue to help us deliver these educational topics to you. If you've attended any of TSNN's recent webinars, you may have noticed they have been brought to you by OnStream Media, the leader in multimedia webinar and webcasting services. Did you know that the same technology can help you get better results for your own organization? OnStream's virtual event solutions can connect you with colleagues and customers, extend the value of your events, and boost profits. Webinars and webcasts can provide a platform for branded virtual events that can enhance the value of a live show or operate as a single revenue-generating event. For our free demo and to learn more about how OnStream webinars and webcasts bring measurable ROI, visit onstreammedia.com. And now I'd like to turn the floor over to Michelle Bruno, TSNN blogger and principal of Bruno Group Signature Events. Michelle?
Thank you. Thanks so much, Arlene. Before I introduce Joe, though, and while you're all wondering, hey, where's Joyce? I just want to say Joyce is under the weather today, and I am filling in for her, and we wish Joyce a speedy recovery and can't wait till she's back here moderating these webinars. Joe is one of these jack-of-all-trades, and for those of you who haven't heard of him, we know he's got a little fan club just on call today among our other speakers, but he's also ex-Penton Media, so he's really one of us. He's a leading author, speaker, strategist for content marketing, but he's first and foremost a content marketing evangelist, and I've witnessed this twice now with his Content Marketing World events. He's founded the Content Marketing Institute, which includes the largest in-person content marketing event, Content Marketing World, as well as Chief Content Officer Magazine, the leading magazine for content marketers. He's co-author of Get Content, Get Customers, recognized as the handbook for content marketing, as well as Managing Content Marketing, the real-world guide for creating passionate subscribers to your brand. And I cannot wait to field all the questions from our audience as well as my own at the end of this. So, Joe, give us what you got.
Michelle, thanks so much, and hopefully everyone hasn't fallen asleep from that introduction and all that stuff, but thank you so much for the kind words, and Arlene, thank you so much, and of course we wish Joyce a speedy recovery so she gets well. But thank you to everyone who's on the call today. I really appreciate it. My job is to really be as helpful as possible and to just give you a little bit of insight into what we go through in launching our event and how content marketing has a lot to do with driving revenue associated with that. So as my mother always does before she gives me a Christmas gift, I'm going to give everyone a disclaimer. You're probably all much more experienced and savvy at the trade show world than I am. I've been around it for a long time. Obviously started at Penton Media in 2000. I've been involved in a lot of trade shows, but our event is a little bit more of a conference plus exhibit type of thing, but we've learned a lot along the way, and we've done a lot in the content marketing space, so I'm going to try to share with you as much as I can to be helpful. And please, if you have specific questions that I'm not answering, some of the key challenges that you're going through as it relates to content creation, either online, in print, or in person, I'd love to get to it. So I promised Michelle I wouldn't go too long. We'll make sure we have a good solid at least 15 minutes at the end of this to dig into some Q&A. So I've got a lot of slides, but I'm going to go fairly fast. I'm going to keep it to 40 minutes or less. I'm going to touch on this idea of content marketing, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it is in my world as we deal with it every day, and then also how I think it relates to people in the trade show industry. I'm going to pretty much disclose our event model and how we got started, how much we spent on getting it going, what we do, and probably the best part about what we've been able to accomplish is how we leverage content marketing throughout the life cycle of the event process to drive attendance and other revenue opportunities. So I'm going to go through that, talk a little bit about what we do for paid content as well, and hopefully give you some tips that you can integrate today into what you're doing. I think it'll be a success today if you get one of these tips and you could say, yes, we can go ahead and do this now, or maybe even start to think about the way you market a little bit differently. And then, of course, we'll get to Q&A. So content marketing, I've got to at least give it a definition. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. It's a relatively new term of a very, very old industry. The easiest way to think about content marketing is the idea that we're all publishers today, especially on the non-media side. So these are brands, not traditionally publishers, that are creating compelling and relevant content to attract and retain customers. So different from, I'm not going to advertise or sponsor things, I'm going to create content to attract people to me, similar to the way a media company does, and similar to the way you probably do it through your conference portion of your event. For the exhibit side, I think this is really important because there's a lot of different content marketing activities you can do to drive people to your event that maybe you're not doing, and I think that's what I want you to focus on when you think about content marketing as it relates to you. I like to talk about the difference. I think it's important whether you think you're a non-publisher or a media company publisher. It's important to recognize this is going on and that there's so much money from the brand side coming into content marketing right now. I call it funny. I was on an interview yesterday and I was calling it funny money because there's marketers that are dumping so much money into content creation and distribution, and they're not necessarily measuring it, but it's just interesting to see what's happening. That's probably a webinar for another time. I could talk about all that fun stuff, but what we're seeing is the difference in the media model and a marketer's content creation model is only one thing that's different. So if you think about the content that a publishing company creates versus the content that any of these brands would create, there's actually only one difference, and that this is the difference. It's basically how the money comes in. So let me explain this because it's important, especially as you work with your exhibitors, who I would consider on the marketing side of this business model. So publishers, basically their whole goal, 99% of publishers' business model is to get either paid content of some way, so I will buy a subscription or I'm going to download a video and pay for that, or the other way to do it is sponsored content, or I'm going to buy an ad in this magazine, or I'm going to be an exhibitor at your event. That's the two ways, for the most part, that you make money as a publisher. Marketers, they create content to attract and retain customers by selling more products and services. So I think as an event producer, you're probably straddling the line between both of these because sometimes you do actually have a product to sell. You wouldn't necessarily think you're a media company, but technically probably all of us are media companies in one way. I didn't think about it for a while, but we are a media company at the Content Marketing Institute as well. So if you think about the importance of online, I'm going to keep this really focused on online storytelling because I think that's where the opportunity is. So if you look at, you want to get found in Google, right? Search engine optimization. You want to drive online leads in some way, and you want to have anything of relevance to say in social media. That is all first and foremost driven by what you're saying online. It's the stories you tell. I talk to a lot of brands in a lot of different places about this, and most of them have trouble getting this because most of the content they create is about themselves, their products, their services, features, whatnot, not about focusing on the pain points of customers like a media company would. So that's kind of the changes that we're seeing. I'm going to go through some quick research here just so you can see what's going on, and then we'll get into the heart of the presentation. Basically, 91% are using content marketing. That means that everybody, all your exhibitors are creating their own content in one way or another. So there's a lot of choices out there. That's probably a struggle to get more people to exhibit, to advertise, to sponsor, to do things like that. By the way, that doesn't mean they're doing it well, and I'll get to that in a second. We see about a quarter of budgets going to content creation and distribution. So it's a really, really big industry. This is a pretty consistent number. It's been rising over the years, but basically for a long period of time, we've seen about a quarter of the budget going to original content creation and distribution, and this is rising, as you can see, from year over year. It's a pretty significant rise. I'll zoom in on this so you can see, but basically here's all the different tactics we have to choose from as content marketers and how we want to attract and retain our customers depending on where they're at in the buying cycle. Let me zoom in here so you can see this. But basically, on the B2B side, actually our B2C research was just launched today. So if you're on the consumer side, just go to contentmarketinginstitute.com, and it's a completely free, ungated piece of research you can get your hands on. The B2B side, basically we're seeing businesses put most of their resources behind content creation for social media. And you've got articles, e-newsletters, blogs. What I love about that, 77% of B2B companies have their own blogs, but if you look at IBM research, what's funny about that is that 85% of corporate blogs have 5 or less posts. which means that these people are really good at creating blogs and not really good at consistent creation of content. So you go down the line, videos, white paper, all I'm just want you to take a look at this is that, yes, we are all published today, and whatever side you're on the business model side, there's a challenge here and an opportunity at the same time, because let's say that you're trying to sell exhibit space of some kind. That customer obviously could do it themselves. They could do their own in-person event, and obviously in-person events are done by 70% of your customers right now as it is. So why is this so important for event specifics? I don't know if there's an issue there with the font there, but basically what that says is our marketing is fueled by our attendees, speakers, and subscribers. So I'm going to go through our content marketing world model and how we've done it. We're going into our third year now, and the promotion and marketing by that is done, I think, in a much different way than probably most of you are doing it right now. And so I think there's an opportunity to maybe take some of what we're doing and take it to the next level. So let me go through this a little bit. So here's our website. Very simple website, right? We got the countdown. Here's what we do. The event this year had over 1,000 people. We were in Columbus, Ohio. Next year we'll be in Cleveland, Ohio. So I don't know if you can see these numbers. So a little got messed up here, but here's the trend. So in 2011 we had 600 attendees. 2012 we had over 1,000. Next year we're projecting about 2,000. So the revenue in 2011 was 700,000, and we're projecting a revenue of about $2 million. So not a huge trade show, but pretty good growth for a small event. And what's been interesting about this whole model is that we've been able to spend overall in traditional marketing each year less than $1,000 to get those 1,000-plus people to our event. That, from what I've talked with other trade show folks, that's pretty much unheard of. We don't do a print piece and send it to anybody doing the event, no direct mail, no advertising, nothing like that. So I'm going to go through the model on how we get the people to our event so you can see kind of what we focus on. It's all about the subscriber. The entire business model that we have at Content Marketing Institute is all about subscriber growth and making sure that we have some valuable content to deliver that person, first of all, to get them to sign up, and then overall to keep them a subscriber. And how we do that is basically through our influencer network. And I'm going to use specifically how we leverage our speakers in other parts of the content life cycle. So I've worked with a lot of different media companies where they have a contributing author, and that author will do just a piece of content, or that speaker will just do the event. So I'm going to show you a couple different examples of how we want to leverage that expertise of that contributor in so many different ways. So Amanda here's Amanda Maximu. She's our contributor. Our goal is to make sure that she looks like a rock star, because I already have our database. I know our network. If I want to draw more people into the Content Marketing Institute and ultimately to our event, I've got to make sure Amanda shares this content with her network. I want to reach Amanda's network. We have over 150 contributors, and I want their networks, because if I can get their networks and come back to our site, they can become subscribers of us. That's the subscriber itself is going to drive our entire business model. So Amanda submits a piece of content. We don't pay for Amanda's content, but what we do pay is the editing of that content. And I'll go through that a little bit more later, but in short, we have somebody that looks at the headline, the URL structure, and then we have two people edit that content to make sure that Amanda looks amazing. And then the more that content is shared from Amanda and other people, the more people are going to come back to our site. And I'll go through some social media stuff in a second. Our content schedule, so this is content that we create ourselves to drive interest into the event, and also so that people share this content so that they come to the content marketing world, sign up, and buy our stuff, because obviously we're not creating content because we're just nice people, although hopefully we are. The whole point is we want to drive as many people to our content as possible so they'll sign up and buy things. It's all about revenue at the end of the day. So our content schedule, we do one post every day, 7 days per week. We used to do 5. We've realized that our engagement goes up. We have less traffic on the weekends, but higher engagement. So we want to make sure we keep those posts on the weekend. We're also changing our social media schedule to make sure we're posting more on the weekends and at nights, because what we've found is that we were doing all of our posting during the day from a social media standpoint, and that most people actually engage in posts, and there's less competition at night. So we have to change our schedule on how we do that, and we're trying to keep up. So that's our 24-hour social strategy, and we really need that, especially with our international audiences as well. And then 1 brick per month, and I'll show you some bricks later, but I look at content in 2 buckets. One's feathers and one's bricks. Most of us put out feathers. It's like 5 tips to do this, and it's good content, but it's not long-term, evergreen, going to really shift the industry in one way or another. Those are fine pieces, but we want lots of bricks. I want to focus on big, heavy-duty research reports or e-books that just completely alter somebody's way of thinking about the industry or something like that. Those are the things that really, really get heavily shared and then really drive attention in everything else that we're doing. Hold on one second. There we go. So our new strategy as well, we're focusing on 1 visual post per week. So we're putting more into stock photography. We're putting more into our graphic design so we can get things on Pinterest as well as SlideShare, and I'll go through some of those in a little bit. Hiring content specialists over certain areas. I told you like a second ago, I actually have somebody that looks at every post we put on from an SEO headline perspective. We go crazy over looking at our URL structure. We go over our keywords every week and where we're at in those keywords and what we need to improve and linking, and it's just, from a search standpoint, it's crazy. So at least make sure from this webinar you take away that you're really focused on search engines. And then the whole idea of life or stories. I'm okay with news stories. There's nothing wrong with it. Some of you have news networks where you keep up on the latest stuff. That's not what we do well. What we do well is how-to, and I want substantial stories that are going to be good today and going to be good in 6 months that really talk about strategy and how you do something. So those are the kind of things that we're thinking about from a content standpoint. And then our number 1 action is email. I talked about the subscriber. What we had before, what we were doing wrong, I think, is we had lots of calls to action on one page, and what we're trying to do now is really focus on every page with a call to action is on email. So take Amanda's post again, go back. Everything in the corner is social proof. Join over 25,000 of your peers. Please sign up, and you get this wonderful ebook, 100 content marketing examples as well. So we want to give away, get them on our email list so we can continue to communicate with them ongoing. We use a pop-up technology that's good with WordPress. It's called Pippity. I don't work with Pippity at all, so I'm not shilling for them. I'm just telling you what we use. Same type of thing. I am not a fan of pop-up technology at all when it comes to a user standpoint. From a media company standpoint, from a business person standpoint, Pippity is fantastic. It drives over, this type of pop-up drives over 50% of our subscribers every day. So it is probably the most important thing we do to get more email names. So if you're not using a pop-up technology, you might want to think about it. And by the way, we don't want to annoy people, so this will come up the first time you come to the site, and then you won't see it for 60 days if you don't sign up. So we don't completely bother people with it. And then we continue that. So we have daily updates. So every time we post our content in the morning, then we have our daily update that goes out. They get that at 10 o'clock in the morning. We have a weekly update for those people that don't want the daily. The weekly is every Friday at 11 o'clock it goes out, and it's just a weekly wrap-up series that we go. And we really focus on giving out content gifts. So in order to build the type of traction that we have, we get over 100,000 unique visitors, and we've done that in less than 2 years in our marketplace. We have to focus on social media sharing that our attendees would share, that our speakers share, that any of our contributors would share, and any of our users would share. So we figured out how to do this by giving away content gifts. Let me kind of give you some examples. So we put together these, what I would call bricks, big content packages, like this content marketing playbook. This came out about 1.5 years ago. It's been downloaded, I think, well over 100,000 times. And the way that we focus on this, there's about 50 different case studies, examples in here, and they come from our speakers and our customers that we have. So our sponsors actually get case studies in here. All valuable stuff, all goes through editorial review, but the whole goal, and our influencers. So these are people that we really want to get on their radar, but we don't know how to do it. Well, we put in one of their case studies, we make them look like rock stars in here, and then they go ahead and share it. Remember, we don't need our network. We need our network's network to share so we can drive more of those people that don't know us back to our site. to get involved with what we're doing. So the first thing that I would recommend if you're not doing anything, because most of the trade show companies that I talk to don't even have an influencer list. So the first thing you have to do if you're going to do this is, what is your influencer list? So how do you create an influencer list? So you can use things like listen on Twitter or use Google Alerts and find out who's talking about the things that are important to the people you're trying to reach, your attendees. Who are they? What are they doing? What sites are they hanging out on? Those types of things. So at least have a list of 10 to 15 influencers. And then once you have that list going, we use something called social media 411 sharing. Now, I know some of you in the industries that don't use a lot of social media, but every one of you, there's some social media usage. So you figure those influencers are often those people that are using social media, and they're listening through that. Like if you would mention me at Jump to Joe, my Twitter sign, I would at least see it, and then I could make a decision if I want to do something with that, reply back. If you ask me a question, I'll always respond to that. So, and influencers will do that. And especially if you share a piece of my content, I will remember you. Might not always respond, but I'll always remember. And I think most influencers work in the same way. But with social media 411, think about it this way. For every 6 posts that you share in social media, this is kind of the programming, the process that I would use. One, let's start from the right side. One could be your promotion. Maybe you got an early bird special on your trade show. You have press release, some new feature, benefit, something like that. That's all sales. Then the one in the middle is your piece of content. So your fresh content that you have that's helpful, that's relevant, that's going to move the industry in one way or another. And then the 4, this is your pieces of content from your influencers that are really educational, that really would help your audience, but they're not yours. So if you look at this type of social media sharing, you will realize that 4 out of every 6 times, it's not your content you're sharing. That is so key. Because if I would go to every one of your Twitter sites right now, I would probably realize that you're either doing response, which is great, you're responding to others, but you're doing a lot of your own promotion. So on the ones where you're doing promotion of content, you want the majority of that content to be influences that you're sharing. That is how you build relationships in social media with these people. And it will help you in the future, and I'll get into some of those things as well. Let's skip over that for a second. So our primary social media channels are, we're B2B. Number 1 is Twitter, 2 is LinkedIn, 3 is SlideShare. SlideShare is, if you're not familiar with it, it's YouTube for PowerPoints. I promote it everywhere. I think it's the sleeping giant for social media. I think I'll show you an example here of how we use it in a second. Facebook, Google+, still haven't figured out Google+, but we're there for search. And then from a event standpoint, we use 2 social media services. I guess you could consider them social media, Plancast and Lanyard. So if you're not on those sites from a event standpoint, make sure you do that. And then, of course, there's the big 5 right up top on how we use it. This is my example of SlideShare. So think about taking your content, making it visual, like you could see, all these are very, very visual. It's sort of like a white paper on steroids. We don't do many white papers anymore. We take them and we really create hopefully some really nice visual designs with them. And put a lot of good information in it so that you can really look at embedding it. You don't necessarily have to print it, read it, and whatnot. So this is on SlideShare. As you can see, this was uploaded April, taken a couple months later. So you got 12,000, 13,000 views out of this one. But it drives a lot of subscriptions for us through this. So after about, I think it's 8 or 10 slides, this pops up. You can skip through it. I'm not going to say you have to move on or you have to fill this out to read the rest of it. I'm not going to say that. But we get a lot of conversion through this. And this is completely free service. You can embed it into your site. So if you don't even want to worry about using any kind of gate structure or anything, you could just use this, embed this into your blog post, and you could get a number of people signing up through this. So, you could do this in a lot of ways through your event, where you have let's say you have all your PowerPoint presentations from the event. You could put them on here, and you could drive. That's all content that could be all on your SlideShare channel. You're seeing the CMI channel, but we have a Content Marketing World channel. We hide some depending on what the event is because we make that specific to people that are attending the event, but some of them we let go. And usually after an event is done, in about a month or 2, we will let it go so we can get people that are engaging in that content. We do infographics. This is an infographic on the history of content marketing we did. It got a couple thousand pins on Pinterest. And, of course, as you see, go all the way to the bottom, this was a promotional tool for Content Marketing World 2012. We also gave it away to some of our speakers as speaker giveaways, and there were posters. So it really, really worked out well. We get a lot of people sharing this. So this is, again, this is one of those substantial pieces of content that I think we could all do on the industry. Spreading the news, very, very important. Over the last 5 years, I would say I've probably done over 300 guest posts, interviews, webinars like this one. I think there's a huge opportunity for you to look at the content you have and the experts you have, and how do you get them to spread that in different channels where your customers are hanging out. So many media companies I talk to and work with, they say, oh, no, this is our content. I'm not sharing our content, whatever, and I think that's a big mistake. I think that if you want to get more people to your website online, you have to figure out there's a good portion of your content that you're going to let go and let free, and then you have things like ebooks and subscription forms and things to get the asset for that, and the asset for that is the name in your database, so that you can leverage that to sell. So the results for us have been really well. You see the financial results, so we'll be a couple million plus event next year. Hopefully we'll get to our 1,700 to 2,000 event people that'll be there, but we dominate search engines right now. This is content marketing. We've got the majority of spaces either directly or indirectly in our main keyword. Like I said, over the past, this is just over 2 years, Content Marketing Institute as a site. We have 100,000 plus unique visitors going to that site using no paid media at all. We haven't used any paid media over this time. And then let me talk to you about some event-specific things, and we'll get into some real meat of the tips here. So CM World is our hashtag. We use it throughout the year. We've got over 15,000 mentions of it throughout the year. We actively monitor that. Where I think a lot of events go wrong is they change their Twitter hashtag throughout the year, and like for a different event, so they would say TCM World 12 or CM World 13. Please don't do that. People save your hashtags, and you want to make them used all year round. So from the first year to the second year, CM World as a discussion piece on Twitter was constantly talked about. People were constantly using it in their content, and it rose the level. So just by doing this and focusing on your hashtag on Twitter can make a significant difference. Now I'm going to go through what I call the content life of a speaker. And so, not that we do it right, but I think we do it a little bit differently, because I speak at, so this year, in-person events, I'll probably do about 60 in-person events. And there's only a few of them where I go in and they leverage the content that I bring to the table in different formats. And our goal is, if you have expertise coming to the table, how can you leverage that content through all the things that you're doing? Let me give you an example. So this is Mitch Joel. Mitch Joel is a popular author and speaker. He actually was a fantastic keynote for us in 2012. And I don't just want Mitch to do the keynote. I want to leverage Mitch through all the things that we're doing from a content perspective. So first of all, we sign up Mitch. We say, great, we got Mitch as the keynote. We throw it out on social media. We send an email out. Great, most people do that. No big deal. Then we move on. And Mitch, bless his heart, we request, hey, would you like to blog about what we're doing? And he does, and we do a Q&A with each other, and he goes ahead and promotes that. Then that goes out again on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and he has 50,000 followers. He's a pretty good influencer. And if we make it easy for him to create content and do his podcast or whatever, it's going to be more likely that he'll actually do it. Then we have a magazine. So we do a Q&A interview in Chief Content Officer magazine, base it off a lot of the content that just happened in the podcast, so we get that out there and promote that. That then is also shared again in social media, because we want actually real good content to share. We don't just want to share the news. We want to share the expertise of Mitch, right? We want to make him look like a rock star, and he helps us in all the vehicles that we have as well. Then and more. So then he does it. We didn't even ask him. He did another article on it, which I thought was really interesting, linking to us. Then we had the event that we recorded itself, which became part of our paid content model, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then we did a follow-up article after the fact. We had videos at the event we're putting on the site, and actually we have a couple videos of this cut up in interviews that we haven't used yet, and then we did another rerun of more content and more ideas in the magazine again. So just kind of bring it full circle, and we're using it as much as possible. Our goal is to get about 100,000 impressions, 100,000 like page views if you think about it, from the content of one speaker. And if we can do that one speaker, we had 75 speakers. That's a lot of impressions. We did a really good job on Mitch, not as well on the other ones. So our goal is, how do we take all of our experts and do this type of thing? Because I think it'll make a big difference with getting more people to our site. We really leverage our media partners. We focus on giving so this is a guest article that I did for Copy Blogger. As you could see, it was tweeted out almost 1,000 times. It was really educational, and basically said, I want to do a hard-hitting piece on editorial calendars, and then they promoted the event for us. They were happy to do that. We did the same thing on a free ticket giveaway on Social Media Examiner. We really get our media partners involved. We don't just want them to do necessarily a email blast and say, come to the event. We really want to get their whole brands behind it, like there's partial ownership. Every one of our speakers we look through and can we get them on our podcast. We do a podcast partnership with Next Stage Online Radio and a show called Content Marketing 360, so we get those people on another radio station. So we're trying to help all of our speakers with their promotion and basically becoming the experts, and if we can do that, it'll help everything that we're doing. And then talking about selling content. I'm just going to say this. This is for us. I know a lot of you have sold the content from your events. I really feel it's easier to sell content in other forms by repackaging it than instead of direct content sales. Now, we do have a content offering here. Let me show this to you. We call it Content Marketing World On Demand. We do make money off of it. This year was interesting, the way that we sold it, because I sold discounted, one-of-a-kind virtual tickets at the event. So of the 1,000 people that were at the event, we had, I think, over 200 people sign up for the package, and that made us money right on the spot just from that. And they basically got videos of all the keynotes and then audio and slide of everyone else's presentation, so about 50 different presentations. And then after the fact, didn't sell as well as I would have liked to. That's 2 years in a row that it didn't. So next year, I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually add something on from the start of registration called a virtual ticket. We're going to price it much higher so that even if somebody got the virtual ticket, it's not going to cannibalize anything else that we're doing. And I'm going to see how that goes. So this has been a success for us, but not as successful as I would have hoped it would be from a content sales standpoint. I'd be interested to see what everybody else has gone through that. And then we really focus on in what we would call an exhibitor content package. So if you think about, and I talked with Joyce quite a lot about this because she's trying to get to the idea of how do you get more people to the booth, how do you focus on content from the exhibitors, and there's no easy way to do it, but really what we try to do is we work with our exhibitors so that we can position them as content experts in everything that we have and not directly selling, but really focus on they are leaders in the industry and we can help them get there. So if you see in the upper right-hand corner, these are our benefactors. We call them benefactors. And they're also, most of these people are exhibitors as well. So what happens is they get 10% of all the site banner space that we have. So we limit it to 10 people. And then each of them get the opportunity to blog once a month. That's just the opportunity. It doesn't mean that they get the blog. What is that? How do we do that? It has to go through the editorial process just like everybody else does. Has to be approved, and we work with them to make sure that they really have experts, that they really feel like experts in the industry. So a lot of times we have to go through the editorial process more than once, but it's really worth it because they get vested in what we're doing and they really feel like we're partners in making this thing happen. I don't know if you can do that if you have a church and state thing. We don't have a church and state thing. If it's content going out there, it's got to be good content. I don't care if they're our editors, our staff, our speakers, attendees, or whatnot. So I really feel that this model works really well for us. And then there's the part of the benefactor package. They get 10% of that inventory on the right-hand side of everything that we do. There's a sample of the blog post. They really, really drive a lot of interest in our sponsors and our exhibitors. We sell out of this package. We've got a waiting list for people to get on the benefactor package. They just love it so much because what really sells is the content. and we've got to make sure that they don't sell in their content, but it really is actionable educational content that we put on our network. So I'm going to wrap it up with some final thoughts, and then I would definitely want to take Q&A. Bring Michelle back, and we'll kind of go through some of the things that I missed. So a lot of people ask how we do all this content. We do a lot of content, and we use all contractors to get it done. Everybody's on 1099. We use people that really want to focus on flex schedule. We're a virtual company. We're all over. We've got people in Boston and Detroit and Cleveland and LA and all over the place. So it's the only model that we know. We've been doing it for 6 years, and it works pretty well. But we just use all 1099 workers, and we try to capture everything. So we have so much. We basically recorded everything at the event this year. We did roundtables this year before any of the events started, and we've got those on videotape. And in every room, we have people writing up, live blogging those and taking notes and writing articles and whatnot. And literally, if we did nothing else, we would probably have enough assets from Content Marketing World to one event for all year long and every day. Obviously, we're not going to do that, but we have a ton of assets, and we're trying to figure out now how we're going to use all those assets. And we're already doing a much better job of it for next year because we have a much better plan of how all those things are going to use, what our goal is, and what channels we're going to use for each one of those as we capture everything going forward. And I would just say the last slide here before I bring Michelle on, if you're not used to this model, it's very uncomfortable. You're putting a lot of weight on your partners, but I think that can be a really good thing. It's really helped us out. And I always say if you don't feel like you're going to run off the road with this model, you're probably not driving fast enough. We want to try as many different things as possible and experiment so that in the next year, if it experiments well, we're going to do it the next year and then move forward with that one. So Michelle, I think I'm going to kick it back to you for a couple announcements, and then we'll get into the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Joe. I've been writing copious notes, even though I've heard you speak many times, and been to Content Marketing World, as I said, and it's really great information for our industry. But I do want to touch on a couple of things. And first of all, we've got a question from Tracy Brown. Does Content Marketing Institute have a separate email marketing list, separate from the RSS feed off of your blogs? Like, are you keeping two lists, or is it one combined list of subscribers?
So Tracy, that's a great question, and we've had some growing pains, and I'll tell you exactly what we're doing. So we have one list that our weekly goes to, and we have a separate list for our daily. So on our weekly, we've got about 23,000, and on our daily, we've got something like 12 or 13,000 that get our daily updates. Right now, those are not linked to each other. We're actually going through an RFP process right now to create one database because our databases don't talk to each other. We've got 20,000 names for our print that don't necessarily talk with our email. So we are like the poster boy case for a smaller company that's growing really rapidly, and then, oh my gosh, we've got all these data problems. So, and by the way, our event database doesn't talk to those databases either, so there's a lot of manual work. So hopefully it comes out consistently because we're doing manual work. Our goal is by February, and we've been working on this for a while, that we will have one database focused on each one of these. We'll really start looking at our marketing automation programs and our drip programs, and then whatever we can't put into one piece of technology, we're going to use APIs for, probably would be our print database, and get that straight. So we don't have that figured out by any means, so that's kind of where we're at, getting it moving in the right direction.
Great. You mentioned using influencers. So say a trade show organizer can sort of locate the top 10 or 15 influencers among their attendees, I'm guess you're referring to. Can you give us examples of the kinds of people that we should target and this whole concept of influencers?
So I'm assuming that everybody on this call today knows kind of the leading bloggers, mouthpieces for the industry. Those are the easy ones to get to. Those are the easy ones that your attendees, your prospective attendees, are hanging out on their blog. You can use tools like an Alexa.com. You can obviously track things on Twitter. You can look at Twitter followers. You can look at a tool like Clout to measure. There's actually a new tool out there that we're fiddling around with called Littlebird, and Little Bird will put together influencer lists for your industry. So I would absolutely check out Little Bird and see if that's something that you could use. And I have no affiliation with them at all, but we're just testing it. So that's probably a good way to start with that, and then start putting together those lists. The way we did it was the old-fashioned way of this is years ago when we started looking at Google Alerts, and we started to figure out we targeted different phrases like content marketing, and those people that were writing on content marketing, I would have somebody that physically goes to that site and see, oh, who is this? Is this somebody we should pay attention to? And we're like, oh, okay, who's going to their site? What are the people? How much influence do these people have? And then we would start building a list. Then ultimately our list was about 40 people, and it still is around 40 people, and we move people in and out of that list. But 40 seems to be sort of the number that we focus on. But I would say for starters, just start with 10. Get 10 of those, and you don't have to put competitors on the list, but we do. We absolutely have competitors on our list because we believe in co-opetition. We want to work with them as much as possible, and so I would start there.
Great. So I've got a couple of questions of my own. In this industry, I think we're doing content marketing, but we're really not. And you talked about your 411 model and things like that. But say you're a for-profit trade show organizer, how do you tactically make the shift, besides the 411 formula, from just sending out content all about the event or all about how great we are as an organizer, et cetera, and actually migrate into a position where we're actually delivering high-quality content about our industry? Tactics.
Yeah, I would just say you've got first of all, somebody's got to make the decision that that's the direction you're going to go in, because I agree with you. Most of the events that I go with, they're just all about the event, new speaker, event, early bird, event. And they think that they're doing, like they'll put a new update of things that are going to happen at the event on their blog, and they say, oh, we're blogging. Well, it's not really, you're using a blog tool, but you're not really blogging. So I think you've really got to start thinking about, if you're the publisher for the industry, the expert for the industry, you've got to create that online as well as what you do at the conference. So I would start to develop your editorial calendar. First of all, create your mission for your online property. Let's say that that's your .com or your blog. What is your mission? Is your mission the same? It's probably very similar to what your mission is from an educational standpoint at the show. You need to have the same types of content. You're just not going to have necessarily the event itself. You don't have to do an online event. You don't have to have a video, but you could have blog posts. You could do infographics. This is channel specific, but I think you have to go back to the editorial calendar and say, what stories do we need to have? Do we need to talk about? Start with. I think it's mandatory for all companies, event companies, to do this today, because the traditional ways to market events, and I've got a long history of doing some of these at Penton, they just don't work as well as they used to. And you don't have the whole database. How do you reach that larger audience? The workforce is shifting so much. How do you keep attention on those people? And that's from the network sharing that with other people and really being top of mind that way. Like, if you're going to make any kind of input into the databases or the people that are using Facebook that are your possible attendees, or LinkedIn, you've got to go in with a Trojan horse of content. You're not just going to say, oh, we've got a great event for, database managers, and it's going to be awesome, and here's the keynotes. That's hardly going to get through. What you want to do is you want to say, here's the major influencers that all database managers have to pay attention to. They go to that, they see that, they share it, and then at the end of the day, they'll say, oh my God, there's an event here too. But really what we want to do is get that email address is the most important thing. And if you want to use shareability, the forward to a friend, all those stuff, you've got to give them some ammunition to do that. So that has to be a piece of really interesting content. And the thing is that most of the people on this call, you already have the content. You probably could start with the next show you have and then create a whole editorial calendar based off of that content, and that would take you through all through the year, and you'd do variations of that content and then bring you up to the next one. I think you'd see an amazing difference if you just did that.
Well, Joe, I don't know if you can hear the people freaking out that are listening, because the
number
one thing they're going to say is, oh my heck, as we say in Utah, where am I going to get the people and the content and the editors and, pretty soon cats and dogs will be sleeping together. How did you, at the very, very beginning, when content marketing Institute was just a little embryo, how did you amass this army of people to give you quality content? Because I get now that you are somebody. You're going to get the Mitch Joels and do a, you scratch my back, I scratch your back sort of arrangement. But at the very beginning, how did you start getting initially free, really good content from your community?
So, just so you know, when you make it, we have an army of contributors, but the staff is actually quite small. I mean, if you look at full-time equivalents, we're probably at about 10. We have about 25 to 30 1099s that work on any one project, but we keep it very, very small. Yes, we have 150 contributors, but I think you're asking how do you get to those contributors that they're, and we get about 2 to 3 people a day that are saying, can I write for you? Yep. That's a good position to be in, but you're right, it wasn't always that way. So it took about 6 months of creating content ourselves, and that was honestly me. So I had a blog, 6 months of blogging every day. Nobody read the blog except for my mom, and she didn't know what I did for a living, so it was kind of funny. And so there was a lot of silence there, but so I built up enough credibility to say, yes, I'm a content producer. Here it is. Where the game changer happened was created something called the top content marketing blogs. So I put together this influencer list like we're talking, and every quarter I would update the list, and we created it's almost like a research algorithm of who we thought were the biggest influencers in the industry, and it just took off because now those top 42 on that list could pretty much ask them anything, any favor, because they just thought they were honored to be on the list. It doesn't have to be a list for anyone on this call. It could be something else. It could be a research project. Could be an ebook. We just happened to pick a list, and that list took off. So the number one through number 10 people on that list, these were the most popular social media and content marketing influencers on the planet. They didn't know me from Adam, but they're like, oh my God, we made the list. And it was we really put some research. I actually hired a researcher, and we did it the right way. I think that had a lot to do with it. And then that started it, and from then, basically those people wanted to write for us. And when I asked them for the favor because we gave them that content gift, and then it just started to come in from there. That's one thing. Then the Content Marketing Playbook, started that back in 2009, and that's been a series ever since then. We do social media and content marketing predictions every year. I'm actually working on the one now. We'll do our 5th annual one of that one. I think we've got 85 different people that submitted this year, and those are mostly our influencers. So it's not just one thing. We think about what content pieces we could put together that are going to lift up the leading influencers in the industry so that ultimately, I mean, we don't expect anything back from that, but specifically to any one of those people. But we know if we give that kind of content out there, it's going to come back to us tenfold. And that's just kind of what so every day when we get into our meetings and I talk to my chief content officer about what we're going to do, we try to think about how can we lift up more people in the industry, because if we do that, it's going to come back and help us.
So Leanne is asking, you mentioned a tool, Bluebird, Littlebird.
Yeah, Littlebird, B-I-R-D, yes.
Okay, you wanted to just get clarification on that. So, Joe, what you're talking about, this whole content marketing thing, it really flies in the face of what we're used to in this industry as for-profit trade show organizers or even trade associations that use trade shows and conferences as a huge, addition to our revenue streams. Because as associations, we want to keep these bricks behind walled gardens and make people pay for them.
Yep.
And as for-profit trade show organizers, we want to make sure that either everything we put out has a dollar tag, associated with it and people pay for it, or we're getting some, real quantifiable ROI by putting anything out that we put out. So it's kind of a foreign concept what you're talking about. Can you help us through that?
Man, it's actually I've done quite a few presentations for associations, and when we do analysis and come to it about let's say you do a basic content audit, say, where are all the assets at? How many are behind the gate? How many are in front of the gates? How many are accessible? Almost entirely, it's 95% are behind some gate. that are not accessible except to members, and then 5%, or whatever the case is, and then 5% are free. And I always say, look, that model, you're in trouble with that model. You need to flip that model. It should be 95% free and accessible, and then you have 5% of brilliance that it really separates you and is the true value for your association or your trade show or whatever the case is. And I'm saying, well, what if that 95% you had was optimized, free, and socially shareable? What could that do to drive new members? They all agree, oh, it'd be amazing, but it's the fact that they've never done it, and it's just a different way of doing it. You saw, because I ran into the same thing. These people are stone-faced. They're like, Joe, we can't do that. We can't take that to the board. They'll never say that. I'm just saying, hey, that's fine, but I'm telling you, you cannot. It's very hard to differentiate yourself with just gated content anymore. You have to do it through experiential content. You have to really get people involved in the content creation. The more people you can get involved in the content creation process, the better. If you put that behind a gate, it's not going to be shareable, and you're going to affect one person at a time, and it's a very slow process. You want to get mass amounts of really quality content to the right people so that they share that with more of the right people. So I don't know if it's the best way, I guess I would say, to do it, and this is what I recommend to the bigger brands that we work with on the corporate side, is to do a little pilot. You're not going to go in tomorrow to work and say, oh, my God, Joe said change the model, so change the model. You're not going to do that. And I wouldn't do that because it'd be a mistake, because you're probably very successful with what you're doing, but you want to see if something like this can work. Do a pilot. Take a piece of content. Take something that maybe is not working as well as you'd like it to do, or maybe it's working really well and you think that a content solution would make it that much better, and do just like you would if you were launching a television show. It always starts with a pilot. So let's start. So maybe you say, oh, let's do an ebook around this concept and with these influencers, and let's see how it works. Doesn't mean you have to do everything, but you can get some positive indicators to say, here's how we're going to measure. These are the metrics we're going to look at, and hopefully we'll see positive metrics and some testing on it. And then if you get the positive metrics, you can take it back to the team and say, look, this worked, or look, it didn't work, and here's why. So you don't have to do it. Please don't do it all tomorrow. And that's what I say for people that say, oh, I want to do content marketing. Like, well, you're not going to go in tomorrow and trash the silos and say, oh, we got to do it different now. It'll never, ever fly. But you can test it with little pilot programs, and I guess that's where I would start.
So for the folks that don't already have the army of contributors that you have and worked really hard for, is there a way to automate this process and, do that little sort of pilot program, but, not have to immediately employ, 20 people as editors and folks like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the hardest part is the upfront. So let's say you're going to go with the influencer strategy. And by the way, that shouldn't be too hard because they're probably already been speakers for you, most likely, right? So go to your past speakers. You already have those assets. Look at them and say, okay, what's something that's missing in the industry that we really need to put together? It could be a blog series, could be a webinar series, could be a podcast series, could be an ebook, could be, there's all kinds of different ways you could go with it depending on where you think your audience is. It could be print. You never know. So figure out what that is, and then get those influencers involved in some way and get them all on board together. You're going to have a movement. We're going to do this together. You really only need a really good managing editor to bring that together, because everyone else, every one of those other influencers will give you your content. I'm assuming since they were already speakers, they probably already know who you are and they know you're an influencer yourself, and they would like to get into your network and have you promote their stuff. And this is also a really, really, really good way to get your exhibitors involved, because they will all do it because they want to promote their stuff. But you're going to say, hey, you just can't talk about your stuff that you're selling, but we want to position you as a thought leader. Here's the type of content we need or what we're looking for, or can you comment on this? Shoot, you could everyone on this call could do a predictions post for 2013, and you could get 50 people participating in that, and every one of those 50 people are going to read that and share it and pass it along because they're in it. That's just a very simple idea that everybody could do.
So, Joe, final question is it critical for your business model that everything gets read? I mean, we love as trade show organizers to at least imagine there's some sort of parity between what we put out as content and how it drives the number of people to our live events. But is there also value in just creating a community for community's sake, to just sort of, as you said, rising tide raises all boats. So it's kind of a two-part question, but should we fret if we're putting this stuff out and we can't immediately measure, who's really benefiting from it, other than the people that come to our event?
That is a question you could have a whole series of content on, because it's a really good question. I guess what I would say is the easiest way because everyone on this call is measuring similar things the way I'm measuring, I'm assuming. You're looking at the similar costs, similar revenue lines, and online, my most important measure is the email subscriber. Just start with that simple. So honestly, you don't have to look at page views. You don't have to look at unique visitors. All you really want to do is you want to create enough really good content to drive subscription growth. Because once you have the asset of the email, you can do a lot of different things with that. That is of probably the greatest value, because Facebook and Twitter followers and all that stuff, that's great, but you don't own any of that stuff. Twitter and Facebook owns that. LinkedIn owns their names, whatever connections you have. The only thing that you own, or you would own that email address if they give that to you, because your content is that good. So I would just focus on that, and you can measure the value of an email address. Everyone can. I can tell you right now that the value of our email address is about $21 a year. So anybody can go in and measure, depending on how you're looking at it, what you do with that email address and how you monetize that email address, percentage of people that sign up for that through email and whatnot and through partner email programs. You can measure it. So to do it the way that you want to do it, and then you can come back and say, look, you can do a real simple ROI, Michelle, and say, here's how much time we spent on it. Here's all the things, and we got 7,000 or 700 or 7, whatever, email addresses out of it, and you could say it was either positive or negative. And I would start there, because we tried to look at every indicator on the planet. I wanted to look at open rates and engaged visitors and what does that mean, and referral sources, and all those are really important. But really, it comes down to one number, and that's the subscriber.
Well, Joe, I know you are super busy. I think you got a big event tomorrow, don't you, in New York?
Actually, I have a car waiting outside for me.
Yeah.
To take me to the airport, which is all good. I'm happy we fit this in. Yeah, we have Content Marketing World New York City is tomorrow. So.
You are so great for talking with us today. Did you have another slide, or am I looking at the last one?
I think that's the last slide, but I want to make sure that, because I know we had the sponsor slide, so make sure we throw out some love to OnStream Media for sponsoring this today. So.
Well, I just want to, my last question is really to the audience. Raise your hand if you would like to double attendance at your conference every year, because that's the trajectory that Joe is on. And I get that he eats his own dog food. He's doing a conference on content marketing, and he uses it to grow his audience. But if there's any proof that it works, then I think you should come to Content Marketing World and really see it in action. And so go catch your car. Joe, thank you so much. We'll see you in Orlando, hopefully, or on down the line.
Fantastic.
And
Michelle, thank you so much for all your support, too, and thanks to the whole team there, and Arlene. Really appreciate being on the call today.
Oh, you're welcome. See you soon. And I want to just mention, too, thank you so much to OnStream Media for making this all possible and probably growing Joe's fan club just a little bit more as if it needed to be. But they have done a great job in producing all these TSNN webinars. And thank you so much. And, again, Joyce, if you're listening out there, we hope you're feeling better, and we can't wait to have you back soon. So, everyone, go on and do great things, and we hope you have a great week.